my question was maybe a little multifaceted. I was just hoping you can expand on something. In a previous video, I don't remember which one it was, but you had mentioned how you felt like Christianity or American Christianity was maybe at the beginning of a revival.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question is, can you explain that a little bit, expand on that? Who do you think might be involved in that, and what kind of how do you think that might play out? And I know God works in mysterious ways, and he does it how he wants to do it. But what was your thinking behind that statement?
Yeah. So that's a good question. In terms of revival, I want to pull up the definition of what revival means so that we're working with similar definitions. Biblical definition: making alive again those who have been alive but have fallen into what is called cold or dead state. They are Christians and have life, but they may be needing a reviving to bring them back to their first love and the healthy growth of a spiritual life. It's a good definition. Okay, so when talking revival, my opinion, and this is totally opinion, this isn't me giving some type of like prophetic utterance or nothing of the sort. Okay, so just to be completely clear, here's what I think. I think the church in America specifically has historically been on the wrong side of certain issues, has historically, especially in the last 100 years, given up things like art, music, and culture, and has more or less been known by the things that it's against and not by the things that it's for. And so if we're talking, how can God revive a generation? How can God renew hearts? How can God, do something new in the church that we haven't seen? And the truth is, Chase, we've seen it before. We've seen it throughout history. We've seen it in the Renaissance, right? We've seen it in when Martin Luther was going through the Reformation, and the way that the world became literate as we know it because of the ink press being invented and the scriptures being the manuscripts being translated and the scriptures being available for the first time. We've seen things happen before, and this is where it might get controversial. It's usually on the back of technology, art, and music. It's usually, and when the church could engage in technology, art, and music, the ink press was what? New technology, right? Prior to that, people didn't have access to the Bible. And my theory, this is just an idea, if the church can get back to its first love of Jesus, of proclaiming Jesus, of being known by the things of Jesus and not being politicized and not being, we're against A, B, and C, but we are for A, B, and C, and you're going to know us for A, B, and C, and we're going to go out into the world and proclaim A, B, and C, and we're going to be the hands and feet of Jesus while we do A, B, and C. I think it is possible for us to see a revival unlike we've seen in our society. The tough part is currently neo-evangelicalism, fundamentalism is so intertwined. It's so intertwined into politics. It's so intertwined with the religious right. And it's detached from being the hands and feet of Jesus, right? And so that's kind of what I'm getting at. So in order for that to happen, I don't know how that would play out. I do know that we've more or less checked out of culture. We've more or less checked out of music. We've more or less checked out of art. We've more or less checked out of technology. And when you do stuff like that, then guess what? You leave the world to lead in culture, art, and technology. And what influences the world? Culture, art, and technology, right? That's what drives the paradigm of how people see the world. So much of our paradigm and our worldview in America today is influenced by Christian thinking, Judeo-Christian thinking, our concepts of morality, our concepts of justice. However, we've stepped away from so much of it in the last 100 years. We've become irrelevant. And in order for people to make it in influencing culture, art, and music, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you had to compromise. You had to compromise so much. You had to make deals with certain corporations. You had to get cosigns from certain people. You had to be in certain circles. Well, today, I mean, Mike Winger can amass 250,000 followers on, subscribers on YouTube and preach the gospel unapologetically. Amen Alex can amass 1 million followers on TikTok, right? The Bible Project, 2 million subscribers on YouTube, so on and so forth. And I can give you example after example of people who are pressing into technology, pressing into having hard conversations in media, in culture, and music, who are not needing a cosign from a major Hollywood studio, from a major record company, from a major agency. They're just doing it, and it's blowing up. So my theory is just quite simply, hey, what if in the next 10 years there was a collective influx of folks pressing into culture, pressing into technology, loving Jesus, loving their neighbor as themselves, resource going towards actually helping people, meeting the needs of folks who are going through it. If we were more known by that, my hypothesis, again, this is not prophetic, this is not me speaking as some type of authority. My hypothesis is that I think we would see revival. I think we would see this country embrace Christians or embrace the message of Jesus, even if they are struggling with the hard parts, with the sin part, with the wrath part, with the judgment part. And I think it's very possible. I've never seen a time like this walking with the Lord. I've been walking with the Lord almost 20 years. I've never seen this many Christians in culture, in faith, doing really amazing things. Now, the opposite is also true. I could be totally wrong. Persecution can break out, right? Things can go left really quick, right? But I refuse to walk around with a persecution complex because it's possible. Just because something's possible doesn't mean it's going to happen. So I'm going to believe for the best. I'm going to do my part to leverage my time, talent, and treasure to help as many people, starting with the objective is let me help people first and foremost, right? Then let me build wealth, and then let me give money away to help more people. There was a collective of folks who all thought like that and did this kind of stuff. And the next generation of Christian creatives, the next generation of artists and YouTubers and all that kind of stuff was like, yo, we don't have to walk around with the false persecution complex, one, and we don't have to walk around with this false dichotomy or this false fallacy that we can't be influential, successful, and build wealth. That's another one that we're dealing with, right? And so imagine if 10 years from now, there was 200 YouTube channels with 1 million subscribers that preach the gospel, that the chances in the Lecrae's and the Andy Minios, the Christians in culture, weren't just the anomalies, but there was way more of them. The movies and the content that was being created was more reflective of Christian worldviews. There was more directors in those worlds, more TV shows being made like that, right? And so it wouldn't just be these outliers and these anomalies, that it became the more folks in these spaces. I think this church has done a terrible job of stewarding creatives. I think the church has done a terrible job of engaging creatives. And then they wonder why they leave the church in droves. Well, you told them that Satan was the choir director in heaven. You lied to them about that for years and years and years and years and years. And now they don't know how to reconcile this gift. And so they just bounce, right? And then the pushback will be like, well, no, it's because they're sinners and they wanted to chase the world. That's why they bounce. It's like maybe you just did a terrible job of shepherding them and loving them and leading them. So I tend to default on hyper responsibility of the church when I see something wrong in society and culture. I don't say, well, I expect spiritually dead people to act like spiritually dead people. I expect the church to be the head and not the tail. We've been the tail and not the head for far too long.
I think of like Kanye, and I think of like Chance the Rapper, how, you did the video with him the other day. What role could they play? Because they've got such a wide net. And when Chance the Rapper comes out with a video like he is, and he's still kind of on his journey from our perspective, you don't know where he's at, but he's still kind of on his journey of getting to know Christ. But with the clout that they have, with the cultural influence that those type of people have, I mean,
yeah.
How do you see that?
I wouldn't say that Kanye alone is going to cause revival, right? I say Kanye unapologetically preaching Jesus. And by the way, anybody that's been to Sunday service will know that like the gospel is proclaimed clearly. The gospel is proclaimed multiple times. Kanye is not the center of attention. You could hardly see Kanye on stage at Sunday service. Anybody who's been to one of those will tell you that, right? So the way they frame that is really interesting. So I think what they could do is by just being themselves and hopefully not compromising, we can, what they'll do is they'll soften the palates of other people. When I went and saw Kanye at the Forum, there was 20,000 people there, and we're singing these worship songs, and the whole stadium is singing these worship songs, but you can tell that they're not Christian. It's this awkward environment, and I hadn't seen anything like it since attending a Billy Graham crusade in the late 90s, when like the stadiums would fill up and it'd be a gang of non-Christians there. The difference with Billy Graham and Kanye is Pastor Tyson, Kanye's pastor, is a totally different communicator. Like he's gonna talk about hell and wrath and repentance, right? So it's like Kanye's presenting a more complete gospel, and not to say Billy Graham was bad or anything like that. It just was a seeker sensitive type of presentation back then in the late 90s. And so what I think it'll do is, I'm not saying everybody that was there that put their hand up that day and said the prayer got saved. What I'm saying is those people are gonna leave and be like, gosh, this Jesus thing was interesting. And then they're gonna go search for videos and end up on YouTube channels and end up on, or see a TikTok video in a month from now of Amen Alex talking about Jesus. And then eventually, God willing, God uses these mediums to pull them in and get them into a church and get discipled. That's my theory of that. So I don't think like any one person does anything. I think it's the fact that it's a bunch of people in all of these different pockets that are doing really like cool creative stuff, and it's no longer at a we're just JV quality. It's at A level quality. That all of that combined somebody will see the video of Chance talking about his new song and go, what is this Jesus thing he keeps talking about? And they could have never been raised in a Christian home. Go search for it, and then like, oh wow, Jesus, wow, that was historical Jesus, and they might end up on a Mike Winger channel, and he's explaining the historical validity in the resurrection of Jesus, right? So that's what I'm saying. So I use the illustration, Chase, of not liking avocado and guacamole growing up, and I said I didn't like avocado, I didn't like guacamole, and then one day my friend was like, yo, here's half of my California burrito. And then I ate it, and I was like, yo, what was in that? And he's like, oh, guacamole and cheese and French fries and carne asada. And he packaged the guacamole in a way where I would eat it, not even knowing I was eating guacamole. And now, fast forward, I eat avocado almost on a daily basis. It's because it was packaged in a way where I didn't quite understand I was getting what I was getting. It changed my palate and opened my mind up to it. And fast forward, now I love avocado. I think, the presentation of the gospel could be done in a similar way, where it's packaged into something and you don't even know you're getting it, but then your palate becomes softened, and then you keep seeking it out, and then before you know it, you're not eating a California burrito with French fries and greasy food. You're just strictly eating avocado, and as most folks know, avocado is one of the healthiest things you could have. So that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that I think we could see the same thing happen through a Kanye or a Chance or a Justin Bieber. Mm-hmm. And the best thing I think we could do for them is just pray for them brothers. Like really, like for everybody that has a critical thing to say about Kanye, for everybody that has a critical thing to say about Justin Bieber, for everybody who has a critical thing about to say about Chance, are you praying for them? Is that even a thing you're doing at all? And if you are, cool. But if you aren't praying for them, it's very inconsistent to just say negative things about fellow Christians who are professing Christ yet struggling in their faith. So I don't know. Hopefully that answered the follow-up question.
Yeah, definitely did. And one thing I thought of too, when you're talking about with like creatives and the way, I want to be careful how I kind of term this, but like the institutional church, like you were talking about it, we as a church we put people in a box. Like we've put faith in a box and Christianity in a box. And 100%. So when you talk about, doing things a different way, like YouTube and YouTube influencers, and to tell you about what you're doing and Mike Winger's doing and all of those guys, that's a little bit different than what the church has ever encountered before. And so it's out of the box as far as a way of influencing people. And it's because it's new,
Yep.
right? It's not traditional. And so I think that is one way that we can help influence people who haven't seen the church, who haven't come across the church. And you mentioned the raising hands at the Graham Crusades.
Mm-hmm.
So those folks, I think about the parable Jesus talked about, and where you're spreading seeds on the road, or you're spreading it on the side of the road, or is it in fertile soil? And how can the Christian community help get those seeds landing on fertile soil? And if they are, how can we help those things grow, right? And I think that's a role. I think that's the role in the revival that people like yourself and Mike Winger and all of those, YouTube in general, Christian YouTubers, I think that's a role that they can be, really influential and get the momentum going that way.
What I love about this topic is that, and I don't know if we really have intentionally examined the type of content that you do, that Mike Winger does, and a lot of, Alan Parr. I can go on and on. What do you mean? One of the things I think that creators in that space, bringing these topics to the forefront, do is they do what a lot of churches don't do. So what I'm finding is YouTube offers a space for me to press into things that you never hear in church. And I think that is what makes a channel like yours so effective, and is a big reason why the channels that push into topics from a Christian worldview, but things that you wouldn't hear in the church, I think that has people are looking for this. And I don't know. And it's hard to really speak to, because I don't know if the church is always the greatest place for these conversations. Because I think when you come into a gathering of believers, you come on a unified subject, which is Jesus. Everything's going to be centered around the love of God. And when you talk about love, a lot of times anything that can, take your mind off of that is uncomfortable, especially if it's something that you're not coming from a position in. So if it's a race relations and things like that, and you're a white male, a preacher, that's going to be a level of, you're going to be pretty uncomfortable speaking to that, because you probably will feel that is an area of sufficiency. But you can speak on the love of God. You can speak on the Bible where it talks about unity. And so you're going to go more generalized. Whereas on YouTube, we can have conversations in much more nuance, with less of a risk of feeling oh, I'm going to maybe not going to get the point across as well, or I have to preach a certain sermon point. I don't think Ruslan, I don't think you're looking I got to hit this sermon point to get to the people. It's no, you're looking at it from a standpoint of, I'm going to talk about it in nuance. I'm going to engage with people about it. People are going to leave comments and give me an idea. I can figure out kind of where many believers are with it. And then I'll even go a step further and open up the Zoom. You'll open up the Zoom for us to engage in it further. So I think what you guys are doing, and what I hope, and striving to do just kind of with my channel, is to be able to be that in between where we can address things that we don't often have the space to address in the church. And we can bring kind of the culture, we can kind of bridge the gap in culture. And I think that's why a lot of people are really, we're able to really tap into an audience that I think is neglected by most churches, and not intentionally, but I just don't know if we've been able to really make the church a true safe space for these things. And that's something that really came to me as you were just talking about some of the perks of doing this YouTube stuff, and just how, and even music, and same thing with music, just to flip it back around to Chance, he can do the same thing. And artists and creatives can do that through TikTok, through all these different things, because you can bring Christ into all these different spaces. But I don't think our churches really emphasize how we can do this. For example, me as a pastor, I won't talk about certain things, or I won't touch on certain things, because I don't know if it's necessarily going to be the most productive for my congregation. However, I would encourage all those in my church to get on TikTok, get on your social media, and press into these different areas and speak on these matters. And so leveraging these so that we can be lights in all these other places. That's what I'm really encouraged by, seeing these platforms, that we can have a voice. It may not be your pastor that's doing it, but there are other voices out there, and you can also be a voice in those areas as well.
And I would, just to add to that, I would hope that, my hope would be to encourage people to get into local churches, not perfect churches, but just local churches that we know, hey, if you're in the Arizona area, if you're in the Phoenix area, check out Pastor Trey Van Camp. At the very least, you're going to have a biblical community of people that can help do life with you and walk alongside of you. And I hope that the YouTube stuff could be the vehicle for that. Like, I know Pastor Mike Winger still does Sunday night services at his local church. He's not even on paid staff anymore. Like, that's how I envision it, is like not opposite or outside of the local church, but these are ministries from the local church. You know what I mean?
Right, complement it.
Yeah,
and then complement. What we do is should drive you to the church.
Yes.
Versus it being a church. Like, you're not trying to be
like, I am not a nonprofit.
Church of Ruslan.
Yeah, I'm not a nonprofit. Don't tithe here. Like, you know, none of that. Like, I'm grateful when folks give and do super chats and all that kind of stuff. But no, like, get in a local church. You know what I'm saying?
Kingstream Entertainment. Ruslan.
Joshua the king came down and bore it all. Yeah, conversations front of the fireplace. All of my mistakes how do I erase? Wanna operate at a higher pace. Birth pains causing the body to dilate on a first name basis with the